everybody. It's Sam Amico, Hoops Wire Live on 330 to go. How are you? How was your Thanksgiving? I'm still recovering. Probably be another few weeks before I'm fully recovered because, my Thanksgiving's never one day. It's usually like 6, and I'm on day like 5. So, I think this week we have a lot to talk about in the sense that the Cavaliers actually lost a couple games against the Atlanta Hawks, which is such an interesting thing to have happened because you look at this and the Hawks beat Boston in Boston, right? Okay, right now the Atlanta Hawks are 10-11. I know most NBA fans don't know the Atlanta Hawks, but right now they're 10-11. They lost to the Washington Wizards, who have 2 wins. But the Hawks also beat Boston in Boston. They beat the Cavs in Cleveland. Then they turn around and beat the Cavs in Atlanta 2 days later. I was like, what's going on with this team? What is happening with the Cavaliers right now? And why can't they stop the Atlanta Hawks? It's kind of funny because the Washington Wizards, who were 2-15, or maybe 2-16, beat the Atlanta Hawks. Their only 2 wins came against the Atlanta Hawks. And I had a reader on my Facebook, Amico Hoops Facebook page, who said, maybe the Wizards, who have won 2 games, can teach the Cavs how to beat the Atlanta Hawks. So anyway, it kind of seemed like look, 15-0 start, and then you lose to Celtics, and you come back and win a couple games to go 17-1. And then you lose back-to-back to the Hawks, so you're kind of wondering, what's going on here. And then the Cavs did not look great Sunday night against the Celtics for most of the 3 quarters, especially in the 3rd quarter. It looked like, oh boy, this isn't the same team we saw during that 15-0 start. But alas, Donovan Mitchell took over in the 4th quarter. Really, Donovan Mitchell did the scoring. The rest of the team did the rest. And that's where I was impressed with that win over Boston on Sunday. It was really, and Kenny Atkinson, I thought, after that game said it best. He said, it wasn't an important win for the standings or for our record, but it was an important win for our own belief in ourselves that we can still do this and still get it done. And, Kenny Atkinson admitted after that game against the Hawks, the second loss against the Hawks, he admitted, I sat there wondering if we were ever going to win another game. And you know what? I kind of thought that too. But here the Cavaliers are, granted, Boston was, they were missing Jaylen Brown and Derek White, who were 2 very important starters. But they had Kristaps Porzingis, who didn't play last game. Peyton Pritchard came off the bench, and he's just been a nightmare for opposing teams as probably the leader for 6th man of the year in the NBA. Even though he's kind of small, he's definitely small in terms of NBA players, and he's not real quick either, but he's just a crafty player, and he's caused the Cavs fits in both games that they've played. So the Celtics, obviously Jason Tatum played as well. So Celtics had, a lot of weapons. Don't get me wrong. But the important thing wasn't, worrying about whether Jaylen Brown or these other guys are playing for Boston. It's the Cavs needed a win. And they needed a win at home. And they needed a win against the NBA champs, the reigning champs. So I thought that was great for them and great for morale. And I totally suspect their upward trajectory will continue on after that game. Now, I totally suspect that partially because the Washington Wizards are in town Tuesday night, and they have 2 wins. They're 2-16, and I kind of feel bad. Michael Winger, who most of you have never heard of, that's fine. I cover the NBA, and I barely heard of him. But he is the president, the GM of the Washington Wizards. He's in his 2nd year there. He is a Cleveland native. His career started with the Cavs. He was a front office guy. He was their salary cap guru. Well, the Wizards are in town on Tuesday. For those of you who are watching this live, it'd be Monday, and Tuesday the Wizards are in town, and they're awful. But one thing I think about games like that are, first of all, the Wizards, Michael Winger is following the Cavs blueprint. You probably don't care about that unless you're a diehard NBA fan, but I think it's really cool because here's a Cleveland native who worked in the Cavs front office, who, is tight with Kobe Altman, and he saw how the Cavs have built some excitement and some buzz years after LeBron has left. And at first it looked like it was not going to be that way, right? Looked like it was going to be, the Cavs are going to be bad for a decade at least. And really it was 2 years, 3 years. And Washington is, very similarly building the same way that the Cavs are. So as far as the Cavs go, look, you got Washington at home. You've got the Nuggets at home. Nuggets have been very up and down this year, but are obviously very dangerous with Nikola Jokic. Then you go Saturday, the Cavs play at 1 o'clock in Charlotte. Then they play Sunday at 6 o'clock in Miami. So they've got, a weird back-to-back there. So these are games right here coming up. You got to beat the Wizards, which I'm assuming the Cavs will do with one eye open. Not that the Wizards, I don't want to motivate the Wizards, but I can tell you that I don't believe any watch this show. So we don't need to worry about that. Maybe they do. If they're smart, they do, because maybe they learned something about the NBA that they clearly don't know right now at 2-16. Anyway, so I'm assuming the Cavs win that game. So the games after that with the Nuggets on the road at Charlotte, on the road in Miami, these are games, which Cavs team, I don't want to say is going to show up because for 95% of the season, the Cavs have shown up. But, this is kind of getting into that part of the schedule where, you're past the quarter point of the season and these games can be a little bit, I don't want to say taxing, but, kind of run-of-the-mill regular season games. And that's a way a lot of people approach this. I say a lot of people approach games like this because it's just, it's December, it's cold out, it's I don't want to say the dog days of the season because those are kind of more like after the trade deadline in February. But these are games, that are hard to get excited about if you're a winning team like the Cavaliers are. Charlotte, a Saturday afternoon during college football, probably not a lot of people going to be paying attention. Miami Heat, Sunday night, NFL going on, these key NFL games on Sunday, maybe not a lot of people paying attention. So it's as players and human beings, it's hard to get up for those games. But the Cavs are going to have to do that to be able to continue this great run. Best record in the NBA. Thank you very much. 18-3. So these are things that we'll be looking for the next week. Things that I've seen. Obviously, Donovan Mitchell was terrible in Atlanta. He'll be the first one to tell you. 5 of 23 shooting. Then he came out against the Celtics and was really laboring and really struggling. Was 2 of 8 in the first half shooting. And the third quarter, the Cavs get down to Boston by 14 points. And I'm like, yeah, it's frustrating right now. It's frustrating. They're not looking great. They're not looking like the team that went 15-0. They're looking kind of like the opposite of that. They're starting to look like the team from last year where you didn't know what to expect from night to night. And this is why you go out and you get superstar players like the Cavs did when they traded for Donovan Mitchell. What a fourth quarter. 6 of 6. 2 huge threes. A runner that sealed the deal. Floater in the lane. Not only that, he got a hockey assist, which, for those of you who don't follow hockey, like I don't really do, I know what an assist is, hockey assist is. It's the pass that leads to the pass the pass that leads to the basket. So Mitchell hit Isaac Okoro with a really nice pass when Okoro was cutting, and rather than Okoro shooting the ball. He dished it off to Evan Mobley, two-hand dunk. The crowd went nuts, and that was the game. The end of the game became a free throw shooting contest, and credit to the Cavs. They went, Darius Garland was 4 of 4, Mitchell was 4 of 4, and George Niang. They kept putting George Niang in the game for offense, and everybody was like, why are they doing that? And it's because George is a dead-eye free throw shooter. A lot of people don't know that. They get so frustrated with George, and who dribbled the ball off his shoe, which I've probably seen that happen in the NBA like twice in my entire 117-year life. Someone dribbled the ball off their shoe and out of bounds with no defender nearby. So George did that. So I understand people getting frustrated with George sometimes. But he's a dead-eye free throw shooter, and when the game's on the line, you need free throws. Other than Darius Garland, George is the guy that went on the line the most. So that's why George was in there, and the Cavs knocked down those free throws. And, making those free throws were huge because the Cavs gave themselves that three-point cushion. So that's, all well and good. When it comes down to winning games in the clutch, as Donovan Mitchell said afterwards, this is a game last year we probably would have lost. He said, it reminded me of Game 3 against the Celtics in the playoffs when it was nip and tuck, and then they went on a run, and then next thing you know, they're blowing us out. And he said, that's how this game reminded me of. It was kind of nip and tuck. It was close. Celtics went on a big run, and Donovan Mitchell said, last season, this probably would have been a blowout. We probably would have folded it up, just taken our lumps and gone home. He said, but that's what we learned. That's why playoff experience is so valuable. When people say, this team's spinning its wheels, not necessarily about the Cavs, but we hear that a lot in the NBA. This team is spinning the wheels. The worst thing you can do is be middle of the road and be the 8th seed. Wrong. Because you get in the playoffs, you get playoff experience, and that benefits you in seasons moving forward. The Indiana Pacers went to the Eastern Conference Finals last year. It's because they got a little bit of playoff experience, not the year before, but the year before that. So, getting a taste of the playoffs really is beneficial in the long run. It's very rare. It's very rare to go from 23 wins, 22-60 record to winning a championship. Almost never happens. Even when LeBron James came back, it took the Cavs a year and a half. And LeBron was in his prime at that time. It took them a year and a half to get over that hump and win a championship. So it takes time, and as Donovan Mitchell explained, that playoff experience last year against the Celtics was invaluable, and it's showing up this season. You don't get the best record in the NBA. You don't get to 18-3 overnight. You got to take some lumps along the way. So, the nice thing for the Cavs is they did come out of their first hiccup of the season with a big win over the NBA champs. Nobody cares about injuries or all that stuff. Did you beat the Celtics? Yes. Okay, good. That's all that matters. That we feel good about ourselves. A game we probably should have lost. So, the things I'm seeing that are maybe a little bit of a concern, I thought the defense was better in the second half. I thought the Cavs did a much nicer job defending the three-point line. The concern would have been against the Hawks, they could not defend the three-point line at all. They haven't been doing it very well. Teams have been shooting like close to 40% against them on threes. I thought the Cavs did a much better job against the Celtics for the most part. You're not going to keep them from hitting threes, but you've got to challenge those shots. And I thought the Cavs did that almost for the entire game. I mean, there was a couple of shots that Jason Tatum hit and Peyton Pritchard hit that I'm like, those are well defended. There's nothing you can do about that other than put, a guy who's the combination of Victor Wembanyama and LeBron James in his prime on that guy. And even then, Pritchard was hitting some crazy shots. So I thought the Cavs did a better job at that because they were terrible defending the three-point line against Atlanta, both games. And they got beat pretty good in Atlanta. They Gave up way too many points against the Hawks in Cleveland. So, you know what? That's ancient history, though. The key is that they have to defend the three-point line better moving forward. So, that's a big key. Ty Jerome, not a great week. Not a great last 3 games. And that's, you know what? Look, these are reserves we're talking about. So you're not going to, there's a reason they're reserves. And it's because most of their career, they've been a little bit inconsistent. So, which player is Ty Jerome going to be in the long term? I think he's not going to be the guy who had 29 points against the Pelicans. He's not going to be the guy who only played 11 minutes against the Celtics. I think he's going to be somewhere in between for the long term, and somewhere in between is great. Sam Merrill, got to make a shot. I love the guy. Got to make a shot. You're out there. You can't shoot 1 of 5 on threes. You're out there to hit threes. And, Sam's going to lose his playing time if he doesn't start making those. It's the bottom line. It's what he's out there for. You can't, if you're going to, if you're going to make your career as a three-point shooter, which Sam has done, got to make those. He can't even go 2 of 5. He's got to go 3 of 5. That's all they want. That's what you're out there for. Now, Sam has done a nice job defensively. He's done a nice job in other areas, but you're a shooter. You got to make your shots. If not, we won't be seeing Sam Merrill when Max Strus gets back, because they need him to knock down those shots. So he knows it. He knows it. I've seen the frustration, and sometimes guys just go in slumps. And it's probably been about 10 games for him, which really isn't that many when you're talking about an 82-game season. So you just keep working at it, and eventually you find your groove, and you stop thinking about it, and you just put the ball up, and whatever it is making him miss, it's a mechanical thing. I'm sure he'll get it figured out. And he's playing a lot more minutes than he's used to. So let's see. Any other complaints? No. I mean, Darius Garland had a really nice bounce back game after shooting 3 of 21 from the field against Celtics. He was absolutely vital in this win. Even though Mitchell took over in the fourth quarter, Garland kept them afloat, kept the Cavs afloat, because nobody else really had it going. And Darius Garland finished that game with 22 points. So he's been magnificent this year, 95% of the time. And really, that's what we're looking at if you're an NBA fan. 95% of the time. It's never going to be 100%. Nobody's going to go 82-0. Nobody's going to go... I don't think anybody will be better than 73-9 ever. Maybe they'll tie it, but anyway, I think the Cavs are in a really good spot. I think that you don't need me to tell you that. We can see it, right? We see it every game. I take that back. Not every game. We see it 90% of the time, right? That they're not always playing great, and they still are coming away with wins. 2 games against the Hawks. You threw those games out. Look at where they'd be. And nobody would have even a single doubt. I don't think that many people have doubts now, but because they're still finding ways to win. And I think that win over Boston will spur them on that streak that they were on before those Hawks games. I think they took the Hawks lightly in Cleveland. I don't think they defended as determined as they normally do. And I think that they thought, well, eventually we'll overtake the Hawks. They're playing well in the first 3.5 quarters, but we'll beat them eventually. And they just never found that other gear, and Atlanta did. And the Hawks are so dangerous. Like I said, they went into Boston and beat Boston. So, I don't know. Obviously, I can't get over those losses because I keep bringing them up. But I think that the Cavs learned a little something about themselves. And you know what? Kenny Atkinson said, guess what? We have work to do. And that's fine. We'll put in the work. That's the way you got to approach it if you're an NBA coach. The one thing I will say about Kenny Atkinson is he's an NBA coach through and through. Sometimes there are guys who have just been around the NBA a while, but he truly understands the league. He's been in the NBA, involved in the NBA for 17 years. either as a head coach or an assistant or in some role. And you could just tell he understands NBA players. They understand and appreciate him. And he's really learned a lot, admittedly, from his time in Brooklyn when he was the head coach of the Brooklyn Nets in 2020. Last man to be fired before they shut down the season for COVID in 2020. I brought it up to him and said, "You'll go down in NBA lore." And his response was, "Well, I hope that's great to know. I hope to go down in NBA lore for a better reason than that." But I said, "Well, right now that's all we got." So anyway, he's learned a lot from 2020 till now, admittedly. He went and was assistant coach with the Clippers for a year, then spent 3 years with the Golden State Warriors, won a championship in 2020 as an assistant there under Steve Kerr. And really, even Karis LeVert and Jared Allen, who played for Kenny Atkinson in Brooklyn, have said, "Oh yeah, it's very clear that he's a different coach than he was in Brooklyn." And I think it was Jared Allen who said, "You know what? It was only 4 years ago when he was a coach in Brooklyn, but the game has kind of changed a little bit. It's become even more kind of this pace and space where guys are firing up threes, teams are firing up 45 threes a game. It's become way more of that than even 4 years ago." I don't know what's going to happen in 4 years from now. I hope we're not seeing 73s a game. Kenny Atkinson talked about that a little bit yesterday. He said, the game has changed, and I have had to roll with it. But he said there's ways to, keep it sane, so that it's not just. I saw a clip the other day. I think it was on Twitter or whatever. The Lakers Suns game. They showed a clip, and the headline was, "This is why I hate the NBA," and it was 8 straight threes, missed threes, 4 from the Suns, 4 from the Lakers, 8 straight threes. That was it. Nobody took a shot inside the 3-point line in 8 possessions, and not one of them went in. And I thought, yeah, that's a terrible look. That's a terrible look. Now, part of that, I'm going to go off on a little bit of tangent, is analytics, which I have no issue with. But, saying, hey, if we shoot 30% from 3, it's better than 50% from 2. The math adds up. It is, right? No, it's got to be 33%, because 50% from 2 would be 100 points. 30% from 3 would only be 90. So, you know what? They promised me no math with this job. And there's a reason for that. I just don't have a mathematical brain. But I guess it's 34% from 3 is better than 50% from 2. And you know what? It's hard to hit 34% from 3. So when you don't do it, it gives the league a really bad look. And I think that my whole point behind that is 3-pointers are a lot better when you're making them. But if you're not making them, get the ball inside. Don't just keep chucking them up, hoping that one will go. Now, if you're down 16, 17 points, yeah, go chuck up threes. But, a 3-pointer used to be an addition to your offense. Now, the entire offenses are centered around that. Because one team, the Golden State Warriors, became a mini dynasty 6-7 years ago. Well, I guess 5 years ago. And the whole offense was predicated on Steve Kerr's 3-point shooting. And Steve Kerr, one of the best 3-point shooters in NBA history to this day, percentage-wise, he really integrated a system that would have benefited him as a player and really benefited his team and really played to their strength. The Warriors don't fire away threes like they used to. The last title they won in 2022, they weren't out there shooting 73s a game, or, to be realistic, 35. A lot of passing and cutting, a lot of scores at the rim. The Cavs are trying to do that themselves and having some, so far great success. Draymond Green even said, Um, you know, the Cavs remind me of us and the way we used to be and the way the ball zipped and all that. Draymond Green said that on his podcast, really gave the Cavs high praise and saying they look a lot like the Golden State Warriors. And guess what? They really do. Evan Mobley is the Cavs' Draymond Green. Gets the ball, gets the defensive rebound, brings the ball up the court. Kenny Atkinson said, I'd like to see Evan bring the ball up more. He needs to get more experience at that, feel more comfortable doing that, and be our point forward. So, yeah, it's been a nice run for the Cavs. I think I do have one quick story to tell, and it involves Mark Price, because Aaron Conrad, who you know, who's come on this show twice and is the host of the Mark Price podcast, I need to come clean with some things involving Mark. At least one thing. So I saw, Mark was at the game, the Cavs Celtics game. He will be there in the Legends Corner from time to time, and I strongly advise you to check it out. Mark Price goes there. Larry Nance Sr. goes there to this Legends Corner. It's in the atrium at Rocket Mortgage Fieldhouse, and they do it like an hour before the game. Fans are allowed in. Say the game starts at 7:30. Fans are allowed in at 6. I believe that they're there from 6:15 to 7:15 or somewhere in that area, right before the game. They're there for an hour. You get your picture taken with them, meet them, all that stuff. So I'm trying to think. Brad Doherty's been there. Campy Russell's been there quite a bit. Brad Sellers has been there as well. And Mark Price has been there a few times. And Mark, of course, was there last night. I didn't have time to go up and say hello. I usually do. I usually go up and give him grief, make a few wisecracks. He hasn't said go away yet. And he politely laughs. But anyway, so I didn't go up there yesterday. I didn't have a chance. So I did see Mark. I forgot he was at the game, and I did see him from my press seat walking down by the courtside seats. People were shouting at him, shaking his hand, blah, blah, blah. So I text Aaron from the game. And I said, hey, Aaron, I see Mark down there, acting like he's too fancy for us, greeting all the fans and, waving and smiling and saying hello. And Aaron texts back and said, yeah, like his jersey's hanging from the rafters or something. And I just text Aaron back and I said, if it wasn't for you and I, Aaron, they would have taken Mark's jersey down by now. And, we had a good laugh. And then this morning, Aaron texts me and he says, hey, do you want to come back on the Mark, in fact, he put Mark in the text. So it was a group text between Mark, myself, and Aaron. And Aaron asked, hey, you want to come back on the Mark Price podcast next week? Which, of course, I said, yes, that will, if I may tout this, it'll be my 8th appearance. Mark made 4 all-star teams. I've been on his podcast 8 times. So really, I've doubled him up now. Because I always say every time I go on the Mark Price podcast, it's like an all-star appearance for me. So anyway, so Aaron texted and said, hey, you want to come on next week? And I told Aaron, I said, well, I'm assuming by this invite means you didn't tell Mark how I was talking trash behind his back last night. And Aaron said, no, not yet, but we can have a cleansing on the podcast for you next week, Sam. So I look forward to that. That should be out let's see, today, if you're watching this live, is Monday. That'll be out a week from Tuesday. Don't ask me the date on that. I could probably look it up real fast. It'd be December 10th. December 10th. And here I said I couldn't do math. I just didn't know that 3 times 30 was 90. I thought 3 times 30 was greater than 100. Which is why I'm an alleged writer for a living. As far as the Cavaliers go, I think it's all good news so far. It's so funny when I'm tweeting stuff out during the games, which is generally straight facts, a little bit of analysis in there, and I don't do it much, maybe 4 times a game. So I said in the third quarter, the Cavs are not looking good. I think they were down 12 going into the fourth quarter. They got down 14. I said they have 12 minutes to try to pull it together, because for the last 3 games, they've been a bumbling, stumbling basketball mess. I said that after the third quarter. All the tweets below that, all the replies were blow it up. They need to go get a big guy. They got to trade Jared Allen. That resurfaced. And I'm just like, oh my gosh, they're going to be 17-4 with 2 losses to the defending champs if they lose this game. They won. They're 18-3. And I'm just like, of course, then it goes silent. And the first thing that I thought, and I say this with a great deal of love and admiration, when I read those responses saying that, when I said the Cavs are not looking good, they've got to pull it together. And when I read those angry responses about a team that at that point was 17-3, I thought, just got to remember that the word fan is what? It's short for fanatical. And that's what those responses were. They were fanatical. And I'm just like, then the Cavs go on to win that game. I didn't hear from any of the criticizers at all. Not one person who bashed the Cavs at the end of the third quarter sent me a response after they won. Not one. I checked. Obviously, I need to get out more because I'm checking stuff like that. But it's what I do. And that's kind of the way. Look, there are times when I'm sitting next to Bob Finan, who's been a guest on this show. I'm sitting next to Bob, and I sit next to him every game, every Cavs home game. And we're longtime writers. We're kind of like we're 2 of the senior spokespeople for the Pro Basketball Writers Association. That's how long we've been doing this. But Bob and I have not lost our fandom. We probably got it back as we've gotten older. And we're both just sitting there like, what is going on? We're talking under our breath to each other. What's going on with this, guys? Why can't they pull it together? He's got to make a shot. I mean, Bob and then every once in a while, they'll make a shot, and I'll see Bob kind of be like, yay. And I do that inside or outward. Obviously, as a professional, let me give myself a different title than that. As an alleged professional, I think that there's, we're not really, there's a saying, no cheering in the press box, because you don't want to show your allegiance toward a team. And it's just, there are other people in the press box who are covering the game that aren't working for the Cavaliers, and they're not cheering. And that's just the professional way that it's always been laid out for us. But sometimes inside, look, as a guy who grew up in Cleveland, or I'm sorry, in the 330, Cuyahoga Falls, near Cleveland, I want the Cavs to do well. Number one, because I've been a lifelong fan. Number 2, because it's good for business when they win. It's always easier to cover a winner. It's always more fun to cover a winner. So, as someone whose job it is to cover the team, of course I want them to do well. If I were covering the Memphis Grizzlies full time, I would want them to do very well. When I was working in Wyoming and started my career in Wyoming as a sports writer there, I wanted the University of Wyoming to win the national championship in football and basketball. And I loved covering them. So, I mean, we do have that fandom. Now, obviously, being tied to the area, I have a much greater deal of fandom for the Cavaliers than I would anybody else if I were a transplant living in that another city. So my whole point of this is don't freak out. And I say that every year. When things go great, don't get too high. It's great to get a little high on it. When they go bad, just relax a little bit. You've got the best team in the NBA right now. They're 18-3, best record in the NBA. I think most other teams are at least, the Celtics are second best at 16-4, so they're a game and a half back. Now, I believe the East goes through Boston. But I think the Cavs are right there. So I guess my whole point, what I was talking about Bob Finan and I, is we do have a great sense of passion for the team. And I think, most of the writers who cover them in Cleveland want them to do well. And I would say the same thing about the Browns writers I know. They want them to do well, but if they don't, they've got to report on why they think they're not doing well. And I guess the whole point of this is that there is no point. And that's the show. That's the entire show. It's like, this guy's calling himself a professional, and he sits there and rambles with no point. But some of you seem to tune in anyway. You know what? So Mark Price podcast, December 10th, unless, Mark decides, what, those texts were a little too strongly worded for me, so you're out, Amico, which I doubt because I give Mark grief all the time, and that was probably some of the times I took it easier on him. Now, he has also reciprocated that grief from time to time. So Mark Price podcast next Tuesday. The Full Court Cleveland show has been on FanDuel Sports TV Cleveland, which airs the Cavs games, before Cavs games, after Cavs games. If you really, really are really into it, more into it than me, and I'm on the show, then you can go on FanDuel Sports Network TV's website, and it'll give you the schedule for when that airs. Myself, Rafa Hernandez, Boobie Gibson when he's not out of town for the holidays, and I'm glad that he was able to get out of town, and Nick Perdone, who's a Kent State graduate who will fill in for Boobie from time to time and does all the stuff there at the Big Play Sports Network in Cleveland. I love being on the show just because I'm very honored that they asked me to do it, but it's also, I guess I can tell you where we're at. It's no big secret. The studio's at Burke Lakefront Airport, and I never had any reason to go up there before we started doing this show. And it's really cool because, there's all that history in there. It's almost like a Cleveland airport kind of museum in there. A lot of before and after we record Full Court Cleveland at Burke Lakefront Airport, Amico is walking around the airport reading all of the plaques like Amelia Earhart and the Wright brothers and all that stuff. I'm standing around reading, and people are like, "What are you still doing here? The show, we stopped taping an hour ago." Once again, more evidence that I need to get out more. So anyway, the Cleveland Cavaliers, at this recording, the best record in the NBA. I think they're well on their way to very big things, provided they continue to, stay relatively healthy. And really, you want everybody to be healthy, and you really want everybody to be healthy for the Boston Celtics. And these other teams, Orlando has played exceptionally well without Paolo Banchero. The Milwaukee Bucks are starting to get it together a little bit. Again, games against the Wizards have helped a lot of these teams start looking better. So it's nice that the Cavs have a game against the Wizards in Cleveland coming up Tuesday night. And Wizards, when they were called the Washington Bullets, were my favorite NBA team when I was a little boy. They were called the Washington Bullets then. And then they changed their nickname to the Wizards. And the Wizards got mad at me because I once wrote a funny line And by funny, I mean funny to me. And when I write lines like this, they're really only meant to entertain myself, because that's pretty much all they do, entertain. But I wrote, how is practicing wizardry safer than stationary bullets sitting on a shelf? And the Wizards actually got wind of that and said, hey, Sam, blah, 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 blah. And I thought, you do realize I'm writing this from my dining room table, right? I'm not like really putting a lot of thought into this. So either way, enjoy the Cavs start. It's been great. I hope your holidays, your Thanksgiving was great. It's really the holiday season now. I mean, who isn't all about Christmas right now, right? Or at least that stretch, whether you're maybe celebrating Hanukkah or whatever you're celebrating, everybody is celebrating something. And then, of course, as much as I've eaten already, I think, okay, I've got Christmas stuff around the corner. And I've got the New Year. Is it any wonder? By the time the January 5th, say, show rolls around, Sam Amico will be 718 pounds. And you know what? So be it. I'll work it off after that. Then we'll all be at the gym together because we all made our resolutions and we'll all be working out, right? And I'll be in the gym going, it's so crowded in here. You know what? I'm just not going to go anymore. So anyway, that's the Cavs coverage you've been waiting for, hearing about me gaining weight and not going to the gym. So we will wrap it up here. And thanks so much for joining. And I guess we will talk to you either later this week or early next week. I'll let you know on Facebook. Talk to you then.